John Locke's essay on human understanding battles with the big questions of how we think and perceive the world. It also talks about how we express ourselves through language, logic, and religious practices. Locke tells us the three main goals of his philosophical project, which is where do our ideas come from and what does it mean to have these ideas? What is an idea? And how can faith and opinions help us proceed logically when knowledge itself is limited? Locke has a few things to say about the old schools of philosophy too, especially against the philosophies of Plato and Descartes, because they have a belief in a priori, or other words, innate knowledge, or to make it simpler, these philosophers think that we are born with inherent knowledge. Locke argues against the idea that we are born knowing about certain things. Locke argues that no principles are accepted by every human being, and that if there was some sort of universal agreement about something, then this agreement must have come from some other way instead of some innate knowledge. Locke argues that human beings cannot have ideas fixed in their minds and not be aware of them. So saying that people have inherent knowledge and know about basic principles is absurd, because you have to teach or be taught about these ideas by others or from themselves or from things. Also, since humans differ in the way they have moral ideas and knowledge, it must mean that it is not innate too. Locke also criticizes the theory of innate ideas such as the Platonic theory of forms, and he argues that when people say that ideas are innate, then these people do not truly understand the complexity of saying these things. These people are confused and they need more philosophical schooling to understand that innate knowledge does not exist. Locke also goes on to argue against the claim that God is an innate idea too. He says that God is not a universally accepted idea, not everybody accepts God, and that God's existence cannot be innate human knowledge. Now, having argued against the possibility that there is innate knowledge, Locke then moves on to show us where knowledge comes from. And Locke thinks that knowledge is structuralized or built up from ideas, both simple and complex ideas. And simple ideas get combined in many different ways and they can form complex ideas. If we had a way to measure ideas, we would say that the basic unit of knowledge is simple ideas and that these simple ideas come through experience. However, there are two types of experiences that allow simple ideas to form within the mind. And the first one is sensation, where the mind experiences the world outside the body with its five senses. The second one is reflection, where the mind looks inwardly at itself, understanding its own functions, like thinking, willing, believing, doubting, and so on and so forth. Locke goes on to then cut up simple ideas into these four categories. The first is about ideas that we get from a single sense, such as sight or taste. Then the second is being ideas created from more than one sense, such as shapes and colors. The third being ideas that come from reflection. And then the fourth one and the final one is about ideas coming to us from a combination of sensation and reflection, such as unity, existence, pleasure, pain, and substance. Okay. Locke also talks about the differences between primary and secondary qualities. And the ideas of primary qualities would resemble their causes such as texture, number, size, shape, and motion. And then ideas of secondary qualities would not resemble their causes, such as the case with color, sound, taste, odor. Look, to make things short, to make long things short, primary qualities cannot be separated from the matter, but secondary qualities possess the power of an object to produce the idea of that quality in our minds. Okay? Locke explains how our minds are a powerful tool and that they are capable of making judgments about our perceptions to give light to our ideas. Alright? Let me explain some simple things, okay? But when you really combine these simple ideas together, you will understand how damn powerful our minds can be. Okay, first of all, our minds can remember ideas, they can differentiate between ideas, they can compare ideas to one another, and they can compose complex ideas from other simple ideas. Okay, our minds are also able to make the simplest of ideas into complex ideas by simply ruminating about them. 3 a.m. thoughts. We are also able to take out those simple ideas from complex ideas too, and that is how powerful our minds are. Okay, so Locke also breaks down complex ideas into 4 basic types, and the first is modes. And modes are ideas that do not exist in and of themselves, such as, qualities like numbers and abstract concepts. And then the second one is substances, and they are self-subsisting things or collection of things. Then the third is relations, and the fourth is abstract generals. Locke says complex ideas are created through 3 methods, such as combination, comparison, and abstraction, right? Finally, Locke discusses abstract ideas. Everything that exists within this world is a particular thing, and general ideas come to light when we put similar particular ideas together and then take away and abstract the differences until all we are left with is the similarities. Now, after gaining these similarities, we will create a general term such as, a tree, which is also a general idea. We can form general abstract ideas for 3 reasons, and those reasons are that it would be very difficult to remember different words for every particular thing that exists, right? And having different words for everything that exists would just make communication even more difficult. And also, the goal of science is to generalize and put everything into a category. So that's why we use abstract ideas, okay? Locke moves on to argue against the idea of essences. The idea of essences has been widely accepted since the times of Plato, where Plato argues that we recognize individuals as members of a species because we have an understanding of the essence of those species. For example, we recognize a particular tree as a tree because we understand what the essence of a tree is, okay? However, Locke argues that essences do not exist and that they are simply our abstract general ideas that we have formulated about these things that we can observe. And well, of course, we are going to have similar ideas about things because they actually exist in the world. And just because there are similar ideas about a particular thing, it does not mean that we have an idea of its essence in some objective manner. Humans are going to decide what differences and similarities they want to use to divide and classify particular ideas. Humans choose how to define things rather than discovering the essence of a given thing. Now, sure, Locke has criticized the concept of essences. Well, he argued against the traditional concept of essences, and despite doing this, Locke is an alpha male. Locke is going to adopt the term into his own philosophical ideas, and he's going to differentiate between real essences and nominal essences. And nominal essences is an abstract idea that we make when we identify similar qualities shared by objects. The nominal essences is the idea of those shared similarities. Nominal essences are specific collections of properties that are observable, and from these observable properties we are able to create abstract general ideas, okay? For example, we can observe the similarities between many different, let's say, turtles. And from these many different observations of ours, we are able to form an idea of what a turtle should be. Now, on the other hand, real essences are what makes something what it is. And in the case of physical substances, it is the underlying physical cause of the object's observable qualities. Real essences are the unseen structures and orders of molecules or atoms that allow these observable properties to be observable in the first place. Let us take, for example, our earlier example of turtles, and let's say that we are able to understand the complexity of a turtle. We are able to understand the biological structure of a turtle, the DNA of the turtle, its genetics, and other things of a similar sense, okay? Then we would understand the real essence of a turtle. The real essence has a basis in reality, but nominal essence does not. Locke moves on Locke moves on to talk about language, and he talks about the weakness of language and the common mistakes in language. One huge problem with words is that they do not mean the same thing to everybody: love, hate, unity, peace, etc. These words mean different things to different people. Okay, you guys are smarty pants, obviously you know this. This problem, okay, has four main causes. One is that a word may imply a very complex idea. Secondly, the idea that the word stands for may not have any constant standard anywhere in nature to judge them against. Thirdly, the standard that ideas suggest may not be easily known. And finally, the meaning of a word and then the actual nature of the thing that we use the word for may not exactly be the same. I almost dropped my damn phone on the floor. We also use language the wrong way. We abuse language. Locke says we abuse language because hey, people use words without knowing the meaning. They use words inconsistently. They use words that are outdated for new concepts. And then they go on to introduce new terms without defining them. And people think that the words being said might mean something else, or that the words being said are referring to things rather than ideas. And it confuses them. People also use words incorrectly to change the meaning of things. And people assume that others actually know what they are saying, when in truth they are not being clear enough. Locke says that, come on man, we should not use words without understanding the meaning of it, that we should recognize the same meaning for words as others understand them when communicating, and that we should define our terms and use words consistently. Moving on, Locke talks about what knowledge is and where we can attain knowledge. Okay? According to Locke, knowledge is what the mind perceives, and it perceives by reasoning out the connection or lack of connection between ideas. Since knowledge is just the relation between ideas that are prominent within the mind, it means that the knowledge we are capable of is not actual knowledge of the world itself. Locke identifies four sorts of agreements and disagreements that reason can perceive to produce knowledge, and the first one is to identify and to have diversity. We can identify that blue is blue, and we can make that diverse from others by saying that blue is not yellow. Secondly, we must understand the relation. So let's say two triangles with equal bases located between the same two parallel lines are going to be equal triangles. Thirdly, we need to understand the coexistence of things, such as the fact that iron is always going to be vulnerable to magnets. Finally, we need to understand that existence belongs to the ideas themselves, and that existence is not in the mind. Okay? Locke also talks about 3 grades of knowledge, 3 degrees of knowledge. Okay? And these 3 grades of knowledge is intuition, and that is where we perceive an argument or a disagreement at the moment the ideas are understood. Then there is the demonstration, where we require proof. And then sensitive knowledge, which is about the existence of an external world. Now, here's a question, okay, that Locke deals with. If we only have access to the ideas in our minds, which only exist in our minds, how do we know there is a real world outside our minds? Goddamn 3 a.m. thoughts. Locke tells us to not take this seriously, okay? Because can anyone really doubt that there is an external world out there? It does not matter, Locke says, if we doubt the existence of an outside world or not. All that matters is that we know enough to get around in the world. Okay, that's according to Locke. So, first of all, there is this certain realness and strength to our thoughts and to our perceptions of an immediate object that memories or imaginations do not have. Secondly, we can't get these ideas without the sense organs that are needed to get these ideas. Thirdly, we are able to get ideas of these sorts in certain situations only, so it can't just be the organs themselves that are responsible for producing these ideas. Also, we receive some ideas passively, okay? Hello? Sometimes our ideas come because of pleasure, pain, sadness. and our senses often witness the truth of each other's reports. And finally, one argument against this whole the world does not exist outside the mind is that two different people can share the same experiences. Moving on. Well, those arguments belong to Locke, okay? Well, okay. Moving on, Locke argues that science, most of it, with the exception of math and morality, and most of our everyday experiences are subject to opinion and judgment. Our judgments are based on the similarity between our own experiences and the experiences we have heard described by others. Locke looks at the relation between reason and faith, and he analyzes it and defines reason as being the place where we obtain judgment and knowledge, and that faith is the acceptance of revelation, and that faith has its own truths that reason cannot discover. But Locke says that reason should be used to see which revelations are truly revelations from God, and that we should also use reason to find the constructions of man which are not revelations of God. And I think we can wrap it up here. If you enjoyed this podcast, learned something new, and would like to see more content like this in the near future, then be sure to subscribe. Thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great time ahead of you. And hey man, I love you. Thank you.